Catskills, when they really got going, were one of the better bands. They were one of the top-notch bands. Everybody else was, it's hard to explain. Their music was good, but not good enough to really go anywhere. But Bruce's music, just by himself with his guitar, was good enough to go somewhere. And George Thies was absolutely fantastic. So when you listen to the Catskills and you heard them enough, they're very, very refined for a young group, considering a group that hadn't been together that long.
We expanded quickly, started playing the local swim clubs, and it kept moving on, and to a place in Red Bank, New Jersey, which is known as the Tindavoo Club, which I'm sure is long gone now. But that was a club aimed strictly at teenagers. It was a non-alcoholic type club, which teenagers came to dance. And we played there quite regularly.
In its formative days, the driving force behind the band was lead singer George Thies. But Springsteen slowly developed into the second frontman.
I think there sort of was a little battle going on as to who was going to do the lead singing and who was going to do the background singing there, but they worked it out between them. I stayed uninvolved in that part of it.
For seasoned hand Frank Marziotti, however, the time had come to leave the teenagers to their own devices.
A night in the Tindavoo Club playing, I had a little teeny bopper walk up to me and say, "Are you Bruce's daddy?" Well, that was about the time that I decided that I should stick to my other band and leave the Catskills to the Catskills, because they were such a young group, and they were a very progressive group, and they really didn't need me to stand in their way. That's the way I felt about it anyway. Maybe I was wrong.
As the band developed, Springsteen began to attract attention as a confident and accomplished young guitarist.
You would not hear anybody better than that, not at that age especially. Considering he was self-taught, you couldn't hear anybody any better than that.
I'll tell you the truth, it never occurred to me that Bruce was going to become the star and achieve the fame that he has today, but I knew he was a brilliant boy. He really and truly was. He was a very fast learner, and he had a lot of guts. He was very ambitious. He wanted to get where he is.
Upon their graduation from Freehold High in 1967, the band split, despite growing popularity and a series of performances at the famous Café Wah in New York's Greenwich Village. Springsteen's future now lay outside of his hometown. Asbury Park, New Jersey. Now a run-down, forgotten town. In 1968, however, when Bruce Springsteen began to gravitate towards it, this seaside beach resort was a hive of tourism and activity.
This is where you came. This is where you came with your friends. I know when I was a kid, you know, my parents would say, "Listen, we're going to go to Ohio or something." I wanted to come here on my bicycle with my friends. Come to Asbury Park, you know, come down, go on the rides, and look at the girls, and go shoot the pop guns, and it was really a thriving place, and a good place to come for walks along the boardwalk. You would always end up here. There's always something to do, different all the time.
Not only was the town popular for its beaches, boardwalk and arcades, it housed a thriving rock and roll community and an abundance of live venues.
Asbury Park was a very lively community at that time. It's somewhat dead today, but it certainly was alive and thriving at that time.
Asbury Park was the mecca, and it was so close. 20 minutes out of Freehold, you could ride your bicycle down here. Rock and roll everywhere. Everything that Bruce was into was right here. Fantastic musicians everywhere you look. You know, there's somebody that could do this, or some great piano players and stuff like that. All the clubs they have for young people to go to.
There was a lot of people. I mean, a lot of musicians, and everywhere you turned, there was somebody. If you needed a drummer or a bass player or something, there was always somebody around. You could say, "Hey, you want to try it?" You know, and So we had a nice, nice community of musicians in that area.
Rock and roll music was the thing in Asbury Park. Bruce was in the right place at the right time, and he knew it.
Although many bars offered gigs for cover bands, only one gave musicians the chance to experiment with their own compositions, the Upstage. It was here that Bruce found his haven.
There was the beach bars, had the cover bands, top 40 was, you know, the big thing. Although the album rock bands were coming up, you know, Led Zeppelin was extremely popular then, and you know, anything that Clapton or Steve Winwood did was big. So that was coming up, and there was no room for that in the beach bars because they were an older crowd and they wanted to hear the hits. And they had some great players over there too. And those guys, after their shows, would come over and hang out with us at the Upstage and jam with the freeform players and the more underground, we called it underground at the time, kind of music. Now they call it alternative or whatever. And, you know, we were more, you know, Bruce would get a bunch of guys and jam it and do a song that lasted 25 minutes, you know, and just make it up. You know, just kind of like a blues progression or something. And so the music scene was, like I said, there was different levels.
While Bruce formed a short-lived three-piece called Earth, a young musician by the name of Vini Lopez was also checking out the scene.
I was in a band called, with Danny Federici, Bill Chinnock, and Gary Talent was in the band for a little while, called the Downtown Tangiers Rock and Rhythm and Blues Band. And we toured with the Electric Circus and played in New York City in like 1967, 68. And when that band broke up, Federici and I were still looking for people to play with.
A chance meeting with local surfboard manufacturer Carl Tinker West would alter both Lopez and Springsteen's situation enormously.
I got involved with, because I liked music. I was originally from California in the 60s. A friend of mine named Gordon Kinnerly was involved with Quicksilver Messenger Service. And San Francisco was original music. Upon moving to the East Coast, because that was where the surfboard market was, believe it or not, at that time, I found that all the music that was around was cover music. There was nobody doing anything original at all. And that's why I did that. Then I found the Upstage through a friend of mine named Jim Fainer, who was a biker type guy who was the bouncer there and everything else. And we used to go up there and listen to people jam. And that is where I met Mr. Lopez. I just told him, if you got a bunch of guys, get some guys together, you put a band together. I've got a couple thousand square feet up here, and you can rehearse up there. But the deal is all original music, none of this copy stuff. See, because there's no way you're going to make money being a record player, an animated recording. And Vinny said, good idea, or whatever he said. I don't forget the exact words, but he agreed to it and started to go scout out fellow musicians of the same ilk.
I heard Bruce was going to be playing at this Italian-American club in Long Branch with Earth. And me and my buddy Chuck Dillon, we went up to the place, and there he was playing. And when he took a break, you know, I talked to him for a little bit and said, hey, come down the Upstage, maybe we can jam down there, you know, because the Upstage was still cooking. And months or so after that, Brucey shows up at the Upstage.
And he says, you got to come down here and see this guy. What do you think of him? And it was Springsteen. And Springsteen, even then, as a young guy, was one of the best live performers I'd ever seen. Played guitar. He played guitar all right, but he could sing and knew how to communicate with an audience. He would put fire into it, and it worked.
A band was born, comprising Springsteen, Lopez, organist Danny Federici and bassist Vinnie Roslin. Originally called Child, the band changed their name to Steel Mill and began to compose and practice their own songs.
Once they started rehearsing and practicing and doing this stuff, it evolved. And as it evolved, I mean, you're sitting in the shop, you can hear this every day, and I thought, this is getting